What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Schilling from Secoya Health, and we're bringing you this week's Wednesday Wellness Minutes. And courtesy of Amelia, I'm wearing a mask, and that's about enough. But happy Halloween to everybody who is out there, probably going trick-or-treating right now. If you're walking around with your kids, just put it in your pocket and listen to the show. This week we're going to talk about anxiety and depression, but we want to give you a natural perspective because there's a lot of misinformation. A lot of people are taking drugs for anxiety, and then when they get their anxiousness down, they get way too low, so then they get their antidepressants coming up. So you get the doggy uppers and the doggy downers, and you're trying to find the balance in between. It's really a big challenge. So if you're on a benzodiazepine or Lexapro, whatever all the different anti-anxiety and depression meds are out there, what you want to appreciate is you weren't born with a deficiency of this drug, right? If your brain chemistry is off, it's because there's a reason, right? So let's get into some of those reasons. What we want to think about from a depression and anxiety standpoint is most often the biggest thing we find around here, around Secoya Health, is that it's an imbalance in your microbiome. Now this could be a parasite, it could be a virus, it could be a bacteria somewhere in the mix, but it happens for a specific reason, and your stressor is different than anybody else's, but the symptoms are similar, right? So the bugs get imbalanced, maybe it's a parasite that's throwing off some toxins, some fecal matter somewhere along the way. By the way, this is going to be a really tasty idea, especially for Halloween. Bugs are not supposed to scare you, right? We all have them. They outnumber us by 10 times, so don't worry about the bugs. If you need help getting them in balance, that's what our job is. That's what we're experts in. So just appreciate that our job is to balance them for you and help you understand what they are and help them stay balanced for the long term. So if we're talking about a virus in the brain, maybe it's Epstein-Barr or cytomegalo or HPV or whatever the virus might be. What if it is a bacteria like Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia is actually a bloodborne parasite, but it can be any one of these numbers. Mycoplasma is a big problem for anxiety and things like that. The bug isn't the problem. Find the conflict in life, squash the conflict, the bug's no problem, right? We said last week or the week before, as James Allen said, the malevolent microbe is of no concern if the mind is clear, so keep that in mind. One of the things that you're going to feel when you're depressed, right? If the body's fighting an infection, it's going to start pulling your minerals out and you're going to have low pH, okay? So if you happen to monitor your pH level, that's a good indication you're going to find out. If you feel depressed, check your pH. That's a good, easy first step. And then what you want to also appreciate is people with heavy metal poisoning, heavy metal imbalances, whether it's in their mercury amalgams or if they had their amalgams pulled out, then the mercury got released and trapped in their tissue somewhere, that's a big problem for people. When you're thinking about infections, everybody has different infections at different places. It could be the kidneys, it could be the brain, it could be the heart, lungs, liver, gallbladder, gut, just doesn't matter, okay? Interference fields are a big one. If you've never had your body examined for old injury sites, whether it be the tailbone, the pubic bone, the sternum, the chin, the cheekbones, front of the head, back of the head, could be the corners, it just depends. Some people have scars on the head from surgeries and things like that. Interference fields are a big problem. Traumas to the head, in other words. Unresolved concussions, that can lead to anxiety and depression. One of the two, either one could happen both, just depends. You could also have a distant injury. For example, a mother could come in here and present with symptoms of anxiety, and yet it's all stemming back from an injury to her perineum when she had an episiotomy when she was giving birth. And that will reflex up the governing conception vessel, and that's going to affect maybe the hypothalamus, pituitary, or GV20, which is an acupuncture point on the top of the head. That can also be an impact. So there are a lot of things that can go wrong that can cause your symptoms. What we don't want to do is say, here are my symptoms. Symptoms are bad, let's get rid of symptoms, right? You don't want to squash the symptoms. Symptoms are not the problem. They're an indication your body's trying to heal something. And if your neurotransmitters are wackadoo, if your acetylcholine's off, or your dopamine's off, or your serotonin's off, or whatever might be off, you need to figure out what the reason is behind that. That's what we do. That's what we help you with. So just keep that in mind. For those of you who grew up in a household with secondhand smoke, that can be a big issue for people. The toxins. Toxins are a big issue with anxiety. And those toxins can come from a lot of different things. You could have a gut imbalance that can throw off what are called lipopolysaccharides, LPSs for short. Those can get, if you haven't heard this before, your gut is actually, I consider it your first brain, and this is the second one because there's just as much information going down as there is coming up through the vagus nerve. Therefore, if you have a gut imbalance and that throws off your nerves, it's going to feed your brain the wrong information. If we're outnumbered by 10 times and they have 100 times the amount of DNA we have, they can throw off chemical messengers that can manipulate our brains in terms of telling us what to eat and things like that. But again, if we have no challenges in life, if we have no conflicts that are unresolved, these bugs are not a problem, so keep that in mind. But here's some good ways to avoid these toxins. All right, processed meats is a good one. I was just at a seminar on Sunday, and what did they have for lunch? A bunch of cold cuts. Get your cold cuts. You guys ever seen that commercial? It's hilarious. Anyway, I think it's the Icky Shuffle. and he's doing this little dance at the, whatever, I digress. They were given cold cuts for lunch, and I sadly ate them, and I can assure you that I felt ill as a result of them. But what are you going to do? When you're a captive audience at a seminar and you only have 30 minutes to eat, you just would do what you got to do. But that's a good option for that. Charred meats. Now, raise your hand if you like grilled food, right? Delicious, right? The problem is the meat gets charred and you get these things called advanced glycated end products. They're called AGEs for short. And those are neurotoxins. They get in your body. If your liver's not strong enough, if you don't have the antioxidants to come in and quench those free radicals and get them out of your body and get some donors in there it's not going to be very good. So avoid as much charred meat as you can. Even when you go to Chipotle, which is the only fast food restaurant I trust, the chicken, they usually char the daylights out of it. So I don't get chicken anymore because they just tend to kill it. But keep that in mind. If you ever eat in Asian restaurants, MSG is a big one. Now, you can always ask, and some of them may deny it, but that's very common. It's a well-known neuroexcitotoxin. So monosodium glutamate. Glutamate is a very excitotoxic neurotransmitter in your brain. Your brain actually produces it. They decided to manufacture it in a lab, call it MSG, and then they can stimulate your brain so you get excited from eating that food and you eat more of it. Right? So that's just a word to the wise there. Prescription drugs. Okay, we talked a little bit before. Anti-anxiety meds can cause you to be depressed. Anti-depression meds can cause you to feel anxious. Blood pressure meds can make you feel depressed. They can make you feel anxious. Thyroid medications can make your heart race, make you feel anxious, anxiety-ridden, things like that. All these different areas that can possibly affect you. So it doesn't matter if you're at the high end of the spectrum with anxiety or at the low end with depression. If you're feeling apathetic, maybe you've got a raging case of Epstein-Barr and you're having no hope, loss of hope. There's no point. What's the sense of doing any of it? It just depends on what you're dealing with. Now, moving on to more of the nutrition side of things. There are several different things that we can talk about. So salt is a major issue for people. And I'm not talking getting your white iodized salt off the countertop. You want to have a Mediterranean sea salt and some volcanic salt that's been air dried and things like that that are not cut with metal that has nickel in it and stuff like that. It's going to contaminate it and not that had drying agents. You want Premier Pink salt, Seldamed, which is Mediterranean sea salt from PRL, things like that are really good for you to help balance your adrenals. Most depression is resulting from depression due to the lack of the adrenal strength to bring you up from there. We use a lot of adaptogen in our clinic. That's a product from PRL that is going to help modulate or it's called balance your hormones and your neurotransmitters so that you feel good. Methylated B vitamins like Max B and things like that. If you've never taken Max B, it's an absolute godsend. And then omega-3s. Most people need omega-3s because we're eating the SAD diet, the standard American diet, which is mostly omega-6s, the inflammatory side. A lot of grains, a lot of processed foods and things like that, which really inflame our bodies. So we need those omega-3s to put out the fires to balance that. And we want to avoid the junk oils. On the anxiety side, we want to consider eating some buckwheat. That's a really good food source for getting sulfurated molecules in the body, which is going to help modulate or calm down that anxiety and stuff like that. For the toxins that come into our bodies, the vitamin C is fantastic for neutralizing those AGEs, those advanced glycated end products and things like that that come in on the food. Fantastic stuff there, so use your vitamin C for that if you've been exposed to toxic things. Side note, if you've had any anesthesia and things like that, activated charcoal and vitamin C are great for collecting those toxins and getting them out as far as the gut, as well as the vitamin C helps process that anesthesia out faster. Good idea for you. Magnesium, all right. Most of the time people have magnesium deficiency because it requires adrenaline to keep magnesium in the bloodstream. And in order to have your muscles not cramp up on you or not have your bowels get locked up and you have to take magnesium to get it through, magnesium is a great one for calming down people. Like a lot of people say, I have to take magnesium at night, otherwise I won't sleep. Okay? That's really important to understand. Further on with the food, it goes without saying, as much as I possibly can, I avoid gluten, dairy, sugar, corn, and soy, 100%. Am I perfect at it? Absolutely not. Sometimes when I'm eating at a seminar or somewhere else out, I can't avoid some of the things that are coming in. I just make sure the majority of my decisions are on one side, which is the health side, and then if I an occasional push to this side, I will always have more pulling me that way than I'm going to have pushing me into the disease system. So eat your greens, eat some healthy proteins, get your nuts and seeds and things like that, your omega fatty acids through the fish and things like that, fantastic through the nuts. Brain health. There are a couple areas in the brain from a deep standpoint, the hippocampus and the amygdala. So the hippocampus that's relating to past memories where fear's trapped in there and something triggers it now. So if you have a dog bite when you're a kid, and then let's say you're 20 years later, all of a sudden a dog gets close to you or yips at you, and all of a sudden your brain gets thrown into that cycle of fear, right? It could be an inherited stress. Your ancestors had a stressor that was dormant in the genes, and then all of a sudden you have a life stress now, and you have gene expression. All of a sudden your brain is trapped in this loop. Everybody has a different experience. The amygdala is emotional patterning, and so that's how you learn from your parents and people around you how to react to certain situations. So that's a big thing. Like, does someone become anxious in certain situations? Does someone become depressed in other situations? Is someone able to cope in some and not in others? It just depends on what your patterning is. Occipital lobe is the back of the head. That's your fear cortex, right? Fear of not being in control, anxiousness, overreacting and things like that. That's definitely part of the brain that's going to be affected, as well as the frontal cortex, which is the emotional patterning of the brain. So this is where you modulate your emotional responses. So are you chill? Are you reacting moderately? Or are you, boom, in one direction, super anxious and super excitable and angry and frustrated? Or are you just down in the dumps? So that's your frontal lobe, and that's all about modulating or balancing that brain reaction. And that's what QNRT is great for, is erasing that stress element from your brain and not having you try to think your way out of it. Life is too complicated as it is. If you have to think your way out of every situation, you're not going to be able to get there. So you want to be able to get that brain reset in order to have your brain more resilient when the stressors come in, that you're not reacting to them. So that's a major one. And what we put in the initial notes on this segment is the number one thing you can do for yourself, regardless of whether it's anxiety on the top side or depression on the bottom side, is exercise. Move your body. Anytime you have an emotion you don't like, create motion in your body. You will immediately change the neurotransmitters in your body by changing how all the mechanisms are happening in there. So if you don't like how you're feeling, move yourself. I don't care if you got to jump up and down, shake your fists, do some burpees, I don't know, do a backflip, I don't care what you do. Run as fast as you can, whatever it is to change your neurochemistry, you're going to find that anxiety is going to go away real quick. Because if you're stuck in a spot and all you're doing is thinking about something, and you're not changing the way you're moving, you are going to stay in that chemical state. Your physiology will remain the same, and you will be stuck there until you move yourself. If you have to get up and walk away, if you need to go for a walk, if you just need to lay down. Generally speaking, more activity is better when it comes to anxiety or depression because it's going to change how your body's working. So use that as your best tool possible for raising you up or calming you down. Let it break that cycle. Either burn off the energy with the too much excitement or too much anxiety, or raise yourself up when it comes to depression. All right, so we certainly hope this has been beneficial. A lot of stuff in here. I know I talk really fast. People say it all the time. You just spit out so much information in such a short period of time, but otherwise we'd be here for about 3 hours, and nobody's got time for that. As Sweet Brown said, ain't nobody got time for that. All right, she got bronchitis, and ain't nobody got time for that. So anyway, little social reference for you there. If you don't know it, go look up Sweet Brown on YouTube, and you'll have a good chuckle. All right. Let us know if this has been beneficial for you. Share it with your family and friends so they have a better understanding of what's going on with anxiety and depression. A natural perspective. If they're just looking at medications, most likely they're not getting any better. And if they've already been on one, they've probably been given another just to balance them out, right? Because nobody wants to be trying to go to bed when they're all jacked up. And nobody wants to try and get their day started when they're feeling down in the dumps. So if you want to get to the root cause of your anxiety and depression, let us know. We're here to help you. We have the tools to do that. Whether it be some herbs to help your brain or fixing your brain right from the core root, and that's with the QNRT, all right? So let us know, comment below, share with your friends, whatever you got to do, get the word out. You're part of our mission. You guys obviously want to live the lifestyle we aspire to, which is prevention is the cure. So share that information with your friends and family. Let us know what you want us to talk about, the subject matter. Nothing's off the radar. We'll touch on anything as long as it doesn't get me thrown in jail or something like that. Or my license taken away. But I can assure you I won't talk about that because I need to help people. That's my job. So we'll look forward to seeing you guys all next week for the Wednesday Wellness Minutes, and share your ideas, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. Have a great Halloween. Happy Halloween.